Today, we're going to talk with Antonio Espinoza, who has been working with NYCNVC here in New York and pretty much around North America now for 8 years. He's a practice group facilitator. He's a discovery weekend trainer. He's an integration program trainer. And he is also the executive director of El Curso de Compasión and the lead trainer of El Curso de Compasión, which is the Spanish version of our comprehensive online training. And so he's a pretty busy guy. And I just really thought it would be fun for us to get to know him a little bit and understand partly like what makes everything around here work, because Antonio is actually part of why NYCNVC even exists and functions as well as it does today. So yeah, I just thought like I said, we'd have a little introduction. So welcome. Hello, Antonio. I guess I'd love to just start with the question. I know you came to this work from being a farmer. You worked on an organic farm, or were an organic farmer in Hawaii. Sounds like a nice life. And yet, so I'm just curious, like what took you from being an organic farmer in Hawaii to doing all these things, to really do all these different trainings, and now you're working in 2 different languages. I mean, your work is pretty much spread over our entire hemisphere at this point. And so how'd that happen? Like what happened there?
Yeah, I think like, this was definitely one of those things that I was looking for, and for a while, I think because firstly, I was raised in New York City, and having that as a background of learning so many different cultures and ethnicities, it was just such a melting pot that it really kind of like invigorated me to want to continue learning about people. I was around people for so much that I think that was just such an initiative for me to just see, kind of like, I guess, see, quote, our differences, and yet see how we could all, in such a really harmonious way, work together. And so I think New York City was really the starting ground for me to want to learn more about people and humans, seeing that I was around them and seeing that I was around so many. And so that was kind of like the starting point. I really kind of like was really invigorated to want to work with people. And then I think the one thing that happened that was probably major in my life, and I think probably in the world, was that one day that really stands out for me of living in New York City that just changed the course of history was 9/11. And that was just the event itself, and all of the fallout that came out from there just really didn't seem like something that was really viable for us humans to continue doing, to exist in this world. And that wasn't what I was told, however. Like, I was told that that's how we were going to work in the world. I was told that war and violence and killings were just going to be a part of life. And so I didn't buy that, and I went on a bit of a search. I didn't think that that's how we were going to really be able to best solve our problems. So I went on a bit of a search, and then I didn't find it in college. I didn't find much of it, I gotta say, in a lot of the things that I thought I was going to find it in. Like, I didn't find it in school. I didn't find it with asking people. And so at one point, I ended up in Hawaii, and lo and behold, I was a farmer in Hawaii. It was one of those things that I really wanted to do. So during my time in Hawaii, I was introduced to nonviolent communication. And the reason I was introduced to it is because I worked with a community of farmers, and we lived and worked together. And so it was really important that if we had any conflict, that we were able to address it. And when I was introduced to this idea of working through our conflicts by understanding our needs, I was like, I think this is what I've been looking for. And little by little, I started learning more. I started working with trainers, and it turned out to be the thing that I was looking for. So that was my propeller to want to look for somebody who could teach this. And I wanted to come back to my hometown of New York City. And those two things were available. I came back to New York. I went to an introductory workshop. And then I just really enthralled myself into wanting to continue to learn and to really practice this whole thing of nonviolent communication, as I really saw that this could be the catalyst to a lot of those things that I just saw that were not really probably going to be constructive to our future and our development as a human species. So my starting point was first and foremost living in a place with a lot of people, learning about all the different, backgrounds and ethnicities. I learned about our differences, and yet I saw how beautiful it was when we worked together beyond our differences. And New York City was just such a proving ground for that. And then to, again, meld that with this thing that happened, this catastrophe in New York City. And I think it just gave me the idea that I could find something, and that we could all find something else that was not going to be destructive, and that yet we could still get through our conflicts. And that's kind of like what inspired me to want to keep on looking for this. And then I found it.
Mm-hmm. All right. And so that was 8 years ago.
It was.
You
That's
found
when I
it.
started here.
And how did you go from really just kind of learning about this or starting to know about it to where you are today? Maybe you could talk a little bit.
Yeah, I think so I think when I first arrived to the organization, I knew that I had a goal, which was to really learn this and to really get it under my belt. And not only, but to actually, beyond getting it under my belt, was to really get it into my bones and to really understand, to practice, and to be able to at some point articulate this work. And so I did have a goal when I came to the work and to the organization, which was to learn this, to learn it enough so that I could practice it, and to maybe be able to one day teach it as well. Cool. And so funny enough, that did line up really well, and the learning happened, and that took as long as it took. But in the midst of learning it, which I think I'm not going to be done learning this in terms of like the different challenges in the different areas of my life in which I can apply this to, I can at the same time be able to start sharing this and start bringing this to other people. Mm-hmm. And so part of what happened was that as I was learning this, I also saw that I really wanted to continue and contribute, bringing this to the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. And so I think what happened was that I just said, I want to help in doing whatever I can to bring this to other parts of the world. And so some of the first projects that I worked on were introducing the compassion course to the online world by really putting the word out there on social media, mm-hmm. on online social groups, and
right.
And there were all these private clubs online that I was able to go ahead and spread the word about.
But you played more than one role. It sounds like
right.
Part of what this was for you is, because I know some people just strictly become trainers, but if you look at your resume, it actually goes pretty far beyond training. In a way, you are an international, troublemaker. No.
Yeah.
But no, seriously though, you're an international organizer.
Yeah.
as well. So that's, um, I think that, yeah, I mean, I know that that stands out, but it also, I guess, says that what your goal was not just simply to teach this, but actually be part of like a larger, the overall movement of how does that happen, in
Right.
the actual delivery and the logistics and the opportunities, I guess, that I know that you have
Yeah.
helped the organization take advantage of.
Yeah. I kind of call it like, for me, I always saw that world peace was a possibility. And um, I'm able to now also, by being able to help out in the different aspects of the organization, um, I'm a very active participant and I play a very active role in being able to see that world peace is actually something that is in the development stages. It's actually in the process of being able to happen,
Hmm.
and being able to be part of coordinating roles for the Arabic project, of bringing the Arabic compassion course to the Arabic world. We brought the compassion course to the Spanish world as well, and also helping bring it to the German world, um, alongside with the English community as well. That really lets me know, and it gives me really the motivation and the inspiration to want to continue helping, because I am seeing world peace happen as I'm helping out with these projects. And so it
Right.
seemed like a really far idea for me when I was entering in this work, and when I thought that there was something else that we could do other than kill one another. And yet it's becoming much more of a reality as
Mhm.
I really help support bringing this work to other parts of the world where it really also needs it as well.
Cool. Thank you. So let's talk about that, because, um, you said, well, world peace is now a possibility, and that's something that a lot of folks might want to just say, well, wait a minute here. That's a big statement. I mean, if what world peace was possible, like, why didn't it happen already? And like, why do you think this way? I mean, what can you tell
Mhm.
people who are just going to say, well, you know what, Antonio, actually, you're a bit of a, idealist and a dreamer, and I appreciate I appreciate the sentiment, but this isn't, like, come on.
Yeah. And I think for me, what I've seen happen over the period of time that I've been alive is technology has advanced at rapid speeds. And to think that I could order a taxi from my phone, order food from my phone without ever talking to somebody. Technology is really advanced. And at the same time, the technology of peace has advanced also. And I think now, with the internet and with our abilities to reach different parts of the world, it's becoming much more accessible to find and to have accessibility to resources like the compassion course, like online offerings in general about nonviolent communication that really make this become something real for people who are in a lot of pain and in a lot of conflict. So I think, in short, for me, it's that our technology has allowed us to advance in many different areas, and the technology of peace has advanced also to the point now where we have the technology, and it's called nonviolent communication. And it's also, for me, it's what we do with the compassion course. It's in the compassion course as well, which is that there are tools to make this become a reality, so that we can actually start seeing world peace. And for me, it's a melding of using our technologies that are available alongside with the technology of peace to make this very accessible to everybody in the world who's looking for this and who's looking to have more peace and more understanding and more connection in their life. And so I think it's really that melding of both things, using
Mhm.
technology alongside the technology of peace that's also available in the world nowadays.
Okay, so let's take this a step further. Now you really got me going. Now you're saying, wait a minute, there's this technology that we can use, like deploying computers or something. And so, what is that? I mean, let's look under the hood
Yeah.
here. How does that even? How can you be saying that? How does that work?
Yeah. So I think it is really important to be able to go ahead and detail what this is about, so that it's not just another idea for me that's put out there without really explaining it. So what this work really entails, when I talk about, you know, I have different names for it. There's a name that it's very widely known as nonviolent communication. There's also the idea that we could call it needs-based, you know, conflict resolution. So we can call it nonviolent communication. We can call it needs-based resolution. I think what we're really talking about here, and what this really comes down to, is the understanding and the ability to be able to see our humanity. Now, that is a little bit easier said than done. And I think the more that I ask people, the more that they agree that, yes, I want to be able to see humans, and I would love for other people to see me as a human. There's a challenge there. And the challenge is that I don't think that most of us were brought up to see one another as humans. And I know for myself, I can speak that the experience and the education that I received was that there was something else than humans out there. There were evildoers, and there were also really good people out there in the world. And by that token, there were things that people should and shouldn't do. There were should people and there were shouldn't people out there. And so I received a big education of what it is that I should do, what it is that others should do, what it is that's wrong to do, what it is that's right to do. And so in a way, when I look at the world through that paradigm, it just tends to, I don't think I'm going to necessarily be as connected to somebody else if I'm seeing them through this lens of what they should or shouldn't be doing, or what they're doing right or wrong. And so it creates some distance, and it creates some space from us to be able to just see each other as humans. And so I think for me, the work here is that I understand now that I have this idea of my neighbor being lazy, and that if I address my neighbor and I talk to my neighbor and I say, hey, I think you're being very lazy, that's not really going to help us to work through our conflict, and it might actually create some more conflict, and it will also probably inevitably create some more disconnection as well.
Mhm.
So the mechanics of how this works is, the first part is to become aware that I have that thought, which I would call a judgment thought, that I'm thinking somebody's lazy, or I'm thinking that maybe I'm lazy. And that once I have that understanding, that now I can start figuring out what needs are going on when I'm thinking that somebody's lazy, or when I'm thinking that somebody's stupid or ignorant. So that way, I don't have to eliminate judgment from my life. And the reason that I say that is because I was taught for a long time, most of my life, to work off of the judgment paradigm. And in a way, it worked. It worked to help me live, and it helped to make me, or give me, a sense of understanding of why the world is the way that it is. It probably didn't do the job of helping me connect with myself and connect with what it is that my life is calling for. And it also created, it created some disconnection. And so what it didn't help me do is to create some more understanding of why people are doing the things that they're doing on a much deeper level, so that I could really connect to the life beyond the other person's behaviors. And so the mechanics here, we could say, are a bit simple. It's understanding that I have this judgment idea of somebody, even of myself, and then being able to go ahead and translate that into the needs that are going on for me when I have that judgment idea. And so, and for me, the whole needs idea is really important, because I like to define needs as the energies that we all share. It's the things that we want to experience in life. And so I think that that's very different than what it is and how we're going to meet those needs, which I think vary from person to person. And so when I bring it back to the experience of needs, it gives me a much more centered and grounded idea of why it is that I'm doing what it is that I'm doing, and why it is that you're doing what it is that you're doing. And I think if I were to meld it down into one point, it's that we are the same. We are just one human. And once I get to that point, once I get to the idea that we're all humans and that we're sharing kind of like the same life, it does give me this idea that we are very interconnected, and that we can actually create a lot more understanding from that place instead of the place from right and wrong or should and shouldn't.
Okay. So let me just see if I can feed this back to you. So the technology, just to loop back here, right? The technology that we're talking about is actually, it's not a computer or a phone or anything like that. It's actually how we're choosing to think. And correct me if I'm not
Right.
following here, but and that is that if we recognize and that we want to choose to think in ways that help us see that we're all human, and basically, I guess, get back to that idea that all humans are created equal, and that's a way for us to pay attention to that. And so that we want to also, so we want to notice that, and so that one of the things that gets in our way of that is this propensity that we seem to have for judging, for moralistic judging, making people right, wrong, and making ourselves right and wrong. And so the technology itself, or part of it, I think I'm hearing, is that we can learn to recognize that and shift how we're thinking and kind of almost like reprogram how we're functioning. And instead of coming from right, wrong, make what I think you called a translation to needs. And then also this idea that when we do that, there's something happens among us humans. And that is when we see each other's needs, we see our common humanity. And that creates a connection that we could not actually create in that other realm of right and wrong. How am I doing?
Yeah, that's pretty spot on there. So,
Okay.
Yeah, and I think also when I think of how it is that I would want and how I would yearn to be seen is for my humanity. And I put myself in the position that I think we all want to be seen for our humanity, and maybe not too much for our differences, because I think if I really just bring it back again and bring it back to the simplicity of what we're sharing the same life. I think it's the idea of needs is something that in today's world is probably not a very popular idea, and I really understand that the word needs could really kind of even scare somebody away. And so there's a redefinition here, because I think, I could look at it as somebody being needy, and usually I think if somebody's, looked as being needy, I don't think somebody's going to follow that up by saying like, I got to get to know this person. It's usually like, I'm going to stay away from this person. And the reason that I want to go ahead and reframe this idea of needs is because, again, it's not so much that it's the things that I'm doing to meet my needs. It's just the energies that my life are calling for, whether that be for some more peace of mind or some more harmony, or some more understanding. Those are things that we all share. I have yet to meet somebody who doesn't want to have some more discovery in their life or some more self-expression. And so when I bring it back to that level, I can really have a lot more understanding for why somebody would do something that was so abhorrent for me to see or to experience. And that gives me a whole entire different experience of what's going on for me now that I come from that place of having a compassionate sense of understanding for your behavior and your actions. So it really does change everything when I look at life through this lens of seeing human needs.
Right. So I think what I'm hearing is that that needs in particular, and I'm sure we'll have a PDF, there's a PDF available online that people can grab and take a look at and see specifically what we mean when we talk about needs, because I know in the work that we're involved in, we very specifically define what needs are, and it's often not exactly how we think about it.
Yeah.
So I think that's, yeah. So, but I am understanding, I think what I'm hearing is that's that place, that's that common ground takes place in that universal human need space, you could say.
Right.
So the thing is, I mean, I'm hearing you say, well, we're all the same, but we're not the same. We're all different, actually. So how do you address that? I mean,
yeah,
we are different.
Yeah, we really are different. And I think I love the in a way, I love the differences that we share, meaning that the way in which I might express certain needs that I have are going to be very different than how else somebody else might go ahead and express them.
Mhm.
And there lies the beauty, is being able to go ahead and see the expressions that we have for our needs, and yet still be able to go ahead and connect it back to, wow, like I really understand that I'm expressing myself in this way because this is how I really see beauty in my life, or this is how I really see understanding right now, or mutuality. And if I look at how it is that I'm expressing myself with certain needs, and how it is that I want to express certain needs, I also can start seeing and attributing that to why somebody else would do something that I wouldn't do. However, it's because they're expressing their needs. And so in a way, we're the same and yet we're different. And the way in which we're different is that it's how we're expressing this life. And so, and yet for myself, I get to have that different perspective and understanding that the reason why somebody's doing something that maybe I wouldn't do is because they're really trying to meet their needs here. And so when I look at it through that lens, it really brings me back to this humanity place.
Got it. All right. So the answer is we're all the same, but we're all different.
We're all the same, right? And yet we're different. It's a funny one. It's
I mean, yeah. And I guess, I mean, really, if we think about it, of course, none of us, no, two of us have had the exact same experience.
Right.
Are in the exact same situation or circumstances. And so in that regard, certainly there's no way we could even be the same. We're guaranteed to be different because we're all having a different life. But like, I also just want to go back to what you're saying, and that is, yes, we are all having a different life, and we're all having a life. And in fact, a life that's designed or built out of, as we kind of can look at it, as with a universal set of needs, like with a set of, or a set of universal needs, right?
Right. Exactly.
So it's up to us. That's like almost the working material or energy in this case of life, impulses of life.
Right.
And then how we express them and how we're, what opportunities we have or don't have in life.
Yeah.
Will also be part of that formula, I guess you could say. And so, yes, it does make us all different. But I'm also hearing, with all that in consideration, yet we're still the same because we have this underlying set of energies of life, impulses of life called.
Right.
Need.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So the Discovery Weekend, like you've been to maybe more
Right.
Discovery Weekends than almost anybody, except for maybe me.
Right.
And there's, I know for me, it's one of my favorite trainings because it's where we said, okay, I kind of think I know what we're doing here. I think I know what needs are, and I think I get a little the drift here, but I'm really going to give it a go. I'm going to see if I can't make this something that I actually really understand, know about, and can even do to some degree. And so, yeah, what was your discovery? Like, what is there anything you would tell somebody about the Discovery Weekend that you find really important about this, or something that you like about it, or what would you tell somebody? Who said, well, Antonio, what's this Discovery Weekend?
Yeah, I think it is, for me, the Discovery Weekend, it really is a proving ground where I can come in there with the knowledge and the experience that I have, which for me, the knowledge and experience that I had coming into a Discovery Weekend, that I had read Marshall's book and I had also received some practice in it. However, what I walked away with from the Discovery Weekend was a very comprehensive idea and just a 360-degree view of everything that entails the work of nonviolent communication. Now, in that 360-degree view, it's a very broad one where I really get an understanding of the relationship that feelings have to needs. And I can start working and developing on that relationship a little bit more. I can start developing a closer relationship to feeling my feelings, and then being able to go ahead and connect them more to needs, so that when I'm trying to understand why is it that, you know, I'm doing this thing, I can really have the understanding that I'm doing this thing because of my needs. And yet I can still track back to figuring out, is this working for me? And my feelings are going to let me know of whether that's working for me or not. So again, it's this 360-degree view that lets me go ahead and look at all these big aspects of nonviolent communication, the feelings, connecting to my feelings, right? And feeling my feelings, connecting my feelings to my needs, understanding what needs are. Then being able to go ahead and work on, where we also work on this idea of observation as well, which is a really, really key one. And it's funny because the way in which I am kind of describing the full circle of our Discovery Weekend workshop is that I kind of like to look at feelings and needs as those are really the, if I don't have a grounded understanding of what feelings and needs are, it's going to sometimes be really, it's going to be a challenge, and it's going to hinder my practice if I don't have such a grounded understanding of what those two energies are. And so what I notice, and what I, you know, when I look back now, we were talking so much about feelings and needs, and 8 years later, I'm still talking about feelings and needs in my daily life practice, and in trying to understand conflicts that I have within myself, conflicts that I have with anybody else. It's that if I go back to this idea of these energies that we share, I really get to have a much more broader understanding of the whole picture there. And so the other aspects that we work on the Discovery Weekend, observations, requests, which those are also really big topics to cover, that those actually become very much more, for me, they become a lot more manageable, I would say, and I can actually be able to go ahead and work through observation, work through my requests with this really big understanding, a very concrete and grounded practice of seeing feelings and needs. And so for me, I go back to kind of like this saying that the more that I see needs, the more that I see needs, meaning that if I really put my focus on being able to see human needs out there, I'm going to be able to go ahead and work through this thing of requesting something from somebody possibly, or myself, because now I'm working off of this understanding of why it is that I'm even asking for that. And it goes back to really connecting to my needs and connecting to the other person's needs. And so again, that having a very solid understanding and practice of what feelings and needs are makes the rest of this work a lot more manageable, because now I get to kind of like have a base of what it is that I'm working off of, and then kind of like there's these like offshoots from there, whether it's requests, whether it's creating a boundary in my life. It's from that base of really being able to see our feelings and needs first.
And so if you were gonna, and I think what I'm hearing is that the Discovery Weekend itself is kind of where, for some reason, it's the idea that it's almost like a landing place in the practice where you really get to understand, and again, open to corrections here if I'm not reflecting this, but that this whole idea of feelings and needs, and a lot of people have learned nonviolent communication through Marshall's book and through a language model, which nonviolent communication technically is a language model, right. Which many people learned just to kind of go through it as steps and as a system or a technique. And what I think I'm hearing is that by really starting of all the places where we can start in this practice, that the one that really fuels, supports everything else is this thing with feelings and needs, feelings and needs, feelings and needs. And I know those are talked about a lot. And so, yeah, so I'm just hearing that the Discovery Weekend helps us tune into that, maybe that kind of parallel universe, if you will, of feelings and needs, and almost redefine them, I think, is also just, I'm probably editorializing a little bit here, but that, and it's from that's what you can get from a Discovery Weekend. In other words, it's almost like, yes, here's my landing place for a practice in nonviolent communication. But I almost want to say, well, here, this is my landing place to start living in the awareness of universal human needs.
Right.
Living in the awareness of life. And so having the Discovery Weekend kind of takes it from that place, not from say this, say this, say this, and say that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, there's a big shift, I think, that happened for me, which was that I came into the Discovery Weekend looking at this as a language model. And yet I really ran into it. It really did hinder just my ability to actually work through conflict when I was looking at nonviolent communication through a language model and going through the steps of stating my observation, my feelings, and my needs and my request. I think that came out so mechanical usually for people, and in a very robotic way that it's like, where's the human here? Where's Antonio, and what's going on for him? And so the Discovery Weekend really put the humanity back into what it is that I was wanting out of a situation, what it is that somebody else was wanting out of a situation. And what I mean by humanity is that it put that picture and that idea of needs into the picture of like, what's alive for me, and what's alive for you also. And so it is that idea that what we work on the Discovery Weekend is creating a landing base, so that once I'm wanting to go ahead and go to another place from that landing base, that I can always come back to that landing base to see if I have that solid understanding of our feelings and needs, so that from there we can go off to these other places of really working on figuring out what to do about our needs, figuring out what the request could be, right, and really having a deeper understanding of one another.
Yeah, and I guess also a willingness that might not be there had you been looking from another direction. And just to take this back to the beginning of our conversation, this is the technology that we were talking about, right? This is the application of this technology, and that is that people are going to start to learn the components. They'll learn to see the things they need to see in order to be able to start thinking, to start thinking differently, really, and coming at this from a different perspective. Not really, I almost, want to say it's not really about stopping something as much as about starting something to take and add to how it is we're humans now. Not that we're doing anything wrong, but that there's this thing that we can do. This is, we call it a technology, an awareness that changes how we interact, changes how we think about ourselves and about one another. And this is the first. This is like I guess we could just say like almost like a landing place for that. And
it is. It really is. And you brought up a great point, is that having that landing base allows me to work through really challenging moments when somebody is saying no to a request I have of them. And so that presents a challenge. And so what I could do now is go back to my landing base of feelings and needs to have, again, just a really deep connection and understanding to what's going on for me here in this situation. I just received a no from somebody. And so it gives me a lot more creativity at times to be able to go ahead and understand what my life is calling for. And so from that place of having some more understanding, I can now have some more creative ideas possibly of what I could do also about my needs here. And so in a way, again, what the Discovery Weekend is doing is really giving us that landing base of something to come back to when we are in conflict, when we are really at a lack of understanding of why somebody would say or do something. And it gives me a much more solid, and again, it gives me the choice. And I got to say that what a big thing about the Discovery Weekend and a big thing about this work is that it gives me a choice. I can look at the world through the lens of right and wrong, and I have this other choice now of being able to look at the world through the lens of needs. And so I look at both of those things as choices. I don't ever want to think that this is something that I should do, this NVC thing. It's something that I need to do. Because that really could hinder my practice if I think that it's something that I should do. And so I want to have the ability to choose how it is that I'm looking at the world, from a place, again, of coming back to what is it that I want. And again, that's something that the Discovery Weekend gave me, that first eye view. Like, it really opened my eyes to being able to see that this was a choice, and how it is that I could see the world was a choice. And so that was one of the big things that the Discovery Weekend gave me, was this idea that I have a choice of how it is that I can look at the world. And now I know what those choices are.
Right. So that it's almost, yeah, so that it's this difference, right? This other way of looking at things. You add it to your kind of set of abilities that you have when interacting with people. And that by having this choice, I mean, I'm guessing here, or I can only imagine that it works. Like that it's actually had a positive effect on your life. Yes. Otherwise you wouldn't even do it, right? And in fact, it's just to, I guess, to be kind of true to the work or respectful of the work. And maybe you could speak to this a little bit. I know it's not very easy, even though we can talk about this here, and it can be kind of quantified or outlined in words and things like that. That often there's a real challenge for people, and often people who've read the book and say, "Yeah, I read the book, but this doesn't work." I get into a conversation and I just say the same things I've always said my whole life. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think in a way, I like to think that we're working on two tracks here. We're working on the track that we've had these habitual things that we've done. We've responded to people in the shouldn't world of, what my daughter or what my brother or what my father should do, and the roles that they should play. And then there's this other track that we're working on, which is that I understand that I have these ideas of somebody doing what it is that I think that they should do. However, I'm trying to also figure out, like, what needs am I trying to meet here in this situation? So the two tracks that we're working off here is this habitual world of right and wrong, and this other track here of understanding needs more. And so I think for me, what happens is that when I can have the awareness that I'm having this shouldn't thought, I can now go ahead and look at this other track of what needs are going on behind that idea of somebody being lazy or somebody being
and then this actually going back to this idea, this technology of when I see somebody through the lens of needs, that I can give myself the option to create a different experience in that moment.
Right. Exactly.
Then I might be able to in this other place. And so,
exactly. Yeah. So I think, like, why this is challenging work is, again, I know for myself, and I can speak for myself, I've been playing off of the right wrong idea for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so for me to think that I can just jump off of that and jump onto this track of seeing human needs out there, it's a great idea. And I really hold to that's something that I can do. However, I don't think that that's going to necessarily be easy, depending on the situation that I'm dealing with at times.
Yeah.
To really be able to make that jump to the needs world all the time.
Right. And I mean, I guess, obviously, or maybe not so obviously, the Discovery Weekend comes from decades of experience, actually, right? Of people trying to figure out, how do I make that, like, kind of that transition? How do I, and what gets in my way? What stops us from doing that? Like, when we do read the book and then we go try it, why can't we do it? And so the Discovery Weekend really addresses these things.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like, what we do at a Discovery Weekend is that we have the understanding of why it's hard to do this. And we also understand what are the challenges that are showing up when it is hard to do it. Like, what's going on for me when I'm having a hard time being able to see somebody else's needs also. And so in a way, it's almost like we give you tips in a way of what is it that I'm looking for when I'm having a hard time of trying to see somebody else's needs. And so we're able to address that so that what people walk away with and what participants walk away with from the Discovery Weekend is a lot more awareness and a lot more, in a way, I would call it like self tips. Like you just know that when you're having a hard time seeing somebody else's needs, that you can really, again, tie it back to, well, what's going on inside me right now also, so that I can give myself that attention and understanding that somebody's really, not someone, but something is really hindering my ability to see somebody else's needs here. And so that, again, if I bring it back to that base of just connecting to my feelings and needs,
Yeah.
I have a little bit more opportunity there to create some more understanding in our relationship.
Yeah. And also, I guess part of that is also to see your own needs, which I know many of us have been taught is a bad idea, even.
Yeah.
Or we've been, as we were talking earlier, we were called, that you could be considered selfish or so full of yourself if you're worried about your needs.
Right.
Anything you'd like to say about that? Or?
Yeah. I think what changes, especially at the Discovery Weekend, is that I see this relationship to my feelings and needs as something very, I guess I would say, it's critical actually to really have that connection to my feelings and needs so that I can then be able to see if I want to connect to somebody else's feelings and needs. And so, I think for me, the kind of like the transition that happens is that I go from a place of really maybe having an alienated experience from my feelings and needs. And I attribute that alienated experience to really being taught that, right? And maybe even having the experience that feelings were just a source of pain, that if you have needs and you pay attention to them, that you're selfish. And so that again really creates this distance and disconnection from those energies, which if I were to really connect to them, they give me the information of what it is that, first of all, is going on inside me. Like if I connect to my feelings, I have that understanding of where I'm at, and I get the understanding of what's going on with my needs here. And so if I don't do that work, it's going to be, and if I bypass that, when I try and connect with you from a place of really not having the understanding that I would like to connect with you, then we might actually end up in conflict and in more disconnection. So
because you're really not coming from what you really want. You're coming from what you think you should be doing.
Exactly. Yeah. So I could, in a way, by bypassing my feelings and needs, I could be trying to communicate and connect with somebody that I might possibly not want to be able to connect with in that moment. And yet I'm thinking that I should. So by coming from the place of should, it's really going to go ahead and hinder our level of connection.
Right. So there's this idea of really being able to notice these moments in our lives when we're doing things or thinking that we should do things, or doing things as we think we should, and or not doing things because we think we shouldn't, and that may or may not actually be in alignment in a way,
right,
with what, and I use the word, what my life is calling for, but just kind of that dynamic aspect of life that this gives us a second, it's almost like a second opinion, that I could say, well, this is what I think I should do or shouldn't do, but I have also this other resource that I can use, and that is to check in with myself and see, does this actually work? What do I want this to be part of my life? Does this meet my needs?
Right. Yeah. So in a way, I think, right, it really creates a lot more choice of what it is that I want to do, given the information that I now have of what is going on with me, what's going on with my needs, what is my life calling for. And so In a way, again, what the Discovery Weekend clarifies, and in a way, what we're kind of like sculpting at the Discovery Weekend is our awareness and our connection to our needs. And the more that I have that clarity, right, the more that I really sculpt that idea for myself, it becomes a lot more clearer, whether it is that I want to connect or whether it is that I don't want to connect in a way. And so, and I have that information because my body's giving me that information. And so I like to think that there's eons of wisdom within my body, that, you know, come from millions of years of us being able to be alive and to actually maybe even take care of one another. And I want to tap into that energy sometimes much more than I want to tap into the energy of what it is that I think that I should or shouldn't be doing. There's a lot of wisdom that the body's carrying, and I want to go ahead and maybe trust it and tap into that information. Sometimes a lot more than I want to tap into the information of what I should or shouldn't be doing.
That, I guess, because it's derived, that information, from the very moment that you're in, as compared to shouldn't thoughts, which we inherited sometimes for decades or generations. I think what I'm hearing really in a way is that, look, this is just simply more useful information at times. And even the ability to notice that you're having a shouldn't thought isn't the end. It's actually the ability, or it's creating an opportunity potentially to make a translation of those thoughts.
Right.
Something that's, again, goes back to who you are in that moment. Why am I thinking these judgment thoughts in this moment? What am I trying to accomplish here?
Yeah. I'll finish off with this last one. The really important thing also that I learned at the Discovery Weekend, and this is one thing that one thing that we teach at the Discovery Weekend is that I want to, in a way, welcome my judgments so that I can understand what needs are going on behind them. Oftentimes, you know, before this understanding for myself, I used to think that that if I had a judgment thought, that was wrong, and that I shouldn't think this of somebody, and that I shouldn't have this judgment thought. I kind of thought that judgments were wrong to have. And so what the Discovery Weekend in a way introduces is that I can understand that I have this judgment, and maybe it's probably not going to be the best idea to share this judgment with someone. However, I can really understand that in thinking that my friend is lazy, that I can now understand that I first understand, wow, I think that my friend is lazy. What need is going on for me there? And if I understand that I maybe want some more support and some more understanding, that the first thing that I did was that I didn't throw the judgment away. I really welcomed it so that I can understand what's going on behind that judgment.
Right.
And then I can go ahead and bring that to the conversation instead of the conversation of talking to somebody about how they're ignorant or stupid. I can instead talk about how I'd love to create some more understanding and some more support. And so there's a big transition.
That translation piece that we've
right.
Right.
Exactly.
That, yeah. And I do recall, even in my own practice, what an incredibly powerful shift that created in my life. The ability to be able to translate my judgments was really, I think back on it, it was really it was the threshold, right, to being able to really go in there and kind of make sense of, almost meld these two worlds together, you know, the judgment world and who I am in this moment, and not have to get rid of one and replace it with the other, which is kind of, you know, not really even possible. But this idea of kind of making a transition or a translation where we can really, in a way, give empathy to or have compassion, even for the judgment thoughts themselves, and for right. those of us who are thinking them, even if it's us, and turn it into something else. And I love, you know, kind of what you were saying, and that is, if we can do this, we can have a different conversation.
Right.
We can And in the same circumstances, if we can see this, that we can really change the conversation from right, wrong, stupid, lazy, you know, whatever, to, wow, I'm hurting right now. And I'd love to know if you're interested in that. And those two conversations can come from the exact same situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exact same situation.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And in a way, I think when I look at just looking at life through the lens of judgment, you know, I really like what Marshall said, which is that judgments are needs with a language problem. So by living my life through the lens of judgment, it becomes a little challenging to just know and see what it is that my life would like to have more of. And so,
It almost disconnects you from yourself.
right. And so in a way that my life becomes just a lot more harder to understand if I don't have this translation of figuring out what is my life yearning for? What does my life want to experience more of? And so when I make that shift to understanding more of what it is that my life would like to have more of, I
Which
can
is
now
really
live.
you, right?
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Right. I get to now live my life from this place of having a connection to just what it is that my life wants more of. And I get to have the opportunity to figure out who it is that I want to be. I get to have the opportunity to step into that person that I want to become. I get to
So it's
become those things.
really giving you information. I mean, flat out,
Right.
it's
Yeah,
information about who
exactly.
you are and what you want your life to look like.
Exactly.
Yeah, very. So it's not just about conflict resolution or getting through tough moments, but it really is also contributing to your ability to express who you are and know who that is, and really even bring that into the world is, I think, what I'm hearing.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I think we're all done with our time. Uh, Antonio Espinoza, a lead trainer in Discovery Weekend. And again, his resume includes basically training humans all over our hemisphere. And 8 years worth of work and continuing. So thank you, Antonio. I got to say, just my own personal, it's almost funny to even say this. I know you so well to even talk to you this way. It's just like, but yeah, this has just been really fun. It's been really fun to just kind of create this space and really let you go and be Antonio. So that was really fun for me.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for that.
Yeah, likewise. It was really fun. So thanks for the time and thanks for talking, Tom.
Right. Here we go. Thanks.
Thanks.